my name is Cliff. Welcome to Candid Conversation Zoomed in and Comments video channel. It's a beautiful Saturday here in Southern Ontario where we are recording from. And of course, we are speaking with authors today. A really cool book called Design for Success. I am joined in the Zoom here with Jonathan and Janet. They are the authors of this really cool book. I heard about them through TV, or rather a radio show. And I said, I've got to get in touch with these people and talk about the book Design for Success. Welcome, guys. Thank you very much for taking the time out to join in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So as I stated, I was listening to a radio show and I said, that's interesting. A book about people basically having records that show them how to do just about anything you can imagine. How did you come up with this? What was the genesis of the book?
We've been collecting records for a long time together. And about 10 years ago, we kind of said, let's do a book about our record collection. So the first book we wrote was called Design for Hi-Fi Living. And it tried to take a cultural perspective on album cover art, kind of hidden records from the 50s and 60s.
And one thing that happened is as we went through the record bins, we would find these covers that had objects on them, like modern chairs or abstract art. And we thought, why are these things on these record album covers? What are these chairs? What is this abstract art? What is this, refrigerator telling us about, the life of people who were going to buy these records? And when we started to focus more on the covers, the places that were depicted, the rooms like living rooms or kitchens or basement dance places that were depicted, we were like, we need to look at more of these, because we were just buying them because they were fun and they were 25 cents.
And one of the categories that we ended up collecting is what we ended up calling instructional records. Records that teach you how to do something. Of course, now, that's all over YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. But in the 50s and 60s, you could learn just to do about anything through a vinyl record.
And because the second book we did, we were looking for more fun, vibrant, colorful covers. And we ended up doing a book on dancing, Designed for Dancing. And those are basically instructional too. Though there's music for dancing, because of course you put a record on if you're going to dance in your basement, but also music to teach you how to do the rumba or music to teach you how to do the twist. So it was a little bit like our dance records took us into that world. And then we realized you could get records, not just to learn about how to dance, but about how to communicate your ideas or sell people more over the telephone.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because that's what this book is, Designed for Success. It's really, from my understanding and just glancing at the book and reading it here and there, it's really about how to be successful at just about anything. Like there's one that's really caught my attention, barbecuing to music. I looked at, I started cracking up when I said barbecuing
Yeah.
to how
Yeah.
on earth, how do you do that?
Well, and that was sponsored by Adolph's Meat Tenderizer, a product that's still around. And so I think the idea is you bought a grill, barbecue, and you got this record that was a promotional tie-in to the meat tenderizer. It gave you a few tips on how to barbecue, and then it gave you a soundtrack. So, now you could get a soundtrack from Spotify, music for a backyard barbecue. But back then, you could play a record.
That's pretty funny. And I can imagine some guy with his grill flipping the burgers or the steaks and putting on the tenderizer and boogieing to the beat.
Exactly. No, exactly. There's one about swimming pools too, with a former Olympian swimmer telling you how to do the breaststroke, how to do the crawl. And the first side then is literally instruction so that when you get your swimming pool that you can buy from the sponsor of that record, you will know how to do a few laps.
Yeah, he's trying to teach you how to swim through a record.
Yeah, can you imagine? It's like, I'm sinking.
Yeah, like how do you do that? Because the bottom line is it's audio, it's not visual. Like when we go to a pool,
It's an audio.
we would see the instructor and they'd say, okay, here's how to do the breaststroke, or here's how to do backstroking, or me, I just basically dog paddle while I swim.
Well, we
I
had
don't
to
know
go
how to
to,
swim, really, to be honest with you. I'm fearful of going underwater. So
oh,
I bet you there's an instructional record or even a how-to on the internet of how to basically overcome your fear of going underwater. Actually, I didn't see anything like that in this book, but is there something like that's also covered in this particular book, Designed for Success?
Well, there are a lot of records that use hypnosis or meditation to get you into a mental state that makes you ready to become a better bowler, to lose weight, to reduce your anxiety. There's a great record called Better Golf through Hypnosis.
Yes,
yeah.
I saw that.
And so, in some sense, that was the whole uh, program to use hypnosis, to use meditation to prepare you to learn something or reduce something.
It was really this sense of relaxation exercises, and they appear, as Jonathan has said, across a spectrum of records. So they might say to you, Cliff, put on the record, relax your toes, tighten up your calves, relax your calves, tighten up your kneecaps, relax your kneecaps, tighten up your fingers. And it goes through the whole body. And this is on record after record after record, whether it's for diet or golf or improving your ESP skills, for example. There is that record too. It was amazing how many things were supposed to begin with these relaxation exercises. And they describe that as preparing yourself for suggestion. So that would have been if you were afraid of like being brainwashed, you would say, I'm not going to listen to those records. Those records are preparing me to be, open to suggestion.
Yeah, I bet some people were wondering, is this a CIA plot?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of
Exactly.
military technology ends up on these records.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of learn how to speak a language records. So,
Hmm.
learn how to speak French, learn how to speak Italian
Russian.
and Russian, and they're all based on the US Army's methods.
Mhm.
Really? So a lot of this stuff is actually coming from the military side of things.
Some of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
Just
all of it, of course, no.
and this is post-war, so there was a lot of kind of expansion of this idea of what is the market, who's buying things. People were buying record players, stereo records were introduced in 1958.
Well, and what skills do we want American citizens to gain so that we can go forward as a nation in a certain kind of way? And this is the Cold War. So if you want to prep kids to be ready to go out and learn languages and become global citizens, then why not start them learning how to learn a language young? Not to,
Yeah.
do conspiracy
I,
theory.
I wish I had learned French when I was younger. Maybe a record like that would have helped. One of the things too, I get the real strong impression even from the book that this was mainly a sales tool. Would you say that was correct or accurate about this?
There were a lot of sales records. There were a lot of records that trained people how to sell, trained people how to communicate, trained people how to speak better. So getting rid of both an immigrant accent or a New York, a New Jersey accent. We've got these funny records that, try to tell you need to speak in more like a announcer's voice. So
Yeah, which that's funny to
selling
talk about that. Yeah.
Selling and persuasion was a big topic. And we have records from like the Businessman's Record of the Month Club that, would send you a self-help record every month, just like the Book of the Month Club.
Well, and how to get appointments by telephone, you can see how to get rid of your heavy accent goes with how to get appointments by telephone. Because the idea would be that when the person picks up the phone, they need to bond with you in a certain sort of way or not be concerned about who you might be. You're not their neighbor. They know that, for example. Why would they trust you over the telephone? And so these language and vocabulary improvement records were specifically designed to allow people to use the latest technology, which right then, at that moment, besides records, was the telephone, making use of the telephone to do things that American society was supposed to be participating in.
Yeah, which is interesting because I work in a call center and I also have done broadcasting. So I
Uh-huh.
understand about learning how to do the broadcasting, but also even in a call center. And it's true, you literally have seconds to impress that person if you're doing the selling,
Yeah.
or if somebody's calling me up who's angry, I have seconds basically to get them to de-escalate that anger so I can help them out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, uh, we do train for that in the call center industry. That's my main job. But, this is really interesting to underscore. Now, what I mean by sales, was there a lot of sponsorship of these records by different companies to get their product
Sure.
out there?
Yeah. Well, it makes me think there's one of our favorites. It's called You Be a DJ. So it gives you recordings of how to introduce records, how to, give the call station, and it kind of a whole program of training you to be a DJ. And
Mhm.
it's sponsored by Cameo Records. So Cameo Records has their, Chubby Checker and their hit makers on that record. So you'll play their music.
They basically allowed a couple of their top sellers,
Bobby Rydell, I think.
yeah, appear on, and who does the chubby, 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 take it easy? Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway,
Della Reese, maybe.
Very
yeah.
good.
The idea would be, oh, we're gonna put some of our top sellers on the record, so that'll be a reason for people to buy the record. And then we're going to get you to think about a career in which you will use our product, which is a record.
There's another category. I mean, a lot of the records are aimed at the individual. So self-help, you buy the record and you improve yourself outside of work so you can move up in your career, or you can become a better parent, or you can learn a language on your own. But there's a few records in the book that are put out by big companies like Xerox. There's a really interesting record set called Xerox Effective Listening.
Mm.
And they start out with these scenarios where you have to listen and figure out what they're saying. And one of them is this person who seems to be very, very drunk. And so, you have to be listening and decipher what this person is saying.
But it's a huge packet. It's a
Very
wonderful
serious.
package. We
Mhm.
featured the interior of the package as well. The notion that you could invite your coworkers over, put the record on, each of you would have a booklet, and you could do this, this training together. But one thing I'm thinking about sales specifically is Amway. So we have a number of records in our collection from Amway, the shortening of American Way, founded by DeVos in Michigan. Well, he might not have been in Michigan at that time. He was. And the whole idea is that each individual, as Jonathan's saying, these records are often focused right on the individual. Each individual could become an entrepreneur. So in post-war, Cold War America, every single American could have an entrepreneur status. We would be part of the gig economy. We wouldn't have to have healthcare benefits, right? We would provide them for ourselves because we're selling Amway soap and Amway toothpaste and Amway stain remover and Amway dish powder. And so these records from Amway are all about coming to conferences, getting together, being part of a group of people who sing together, who speak together, who do activities together, and then go out into the world and sell Amway products.
Sell.
So it's the
Yeah.
record for Amway is to sell the American way. So it's for sure thinking of the American way as a product, and it's very anti-communist. I mean, the text on the liner notes is against Russia. It's against communism. It's how
Wow.
much better the United States is. And so we're selling the US, we're selling entrepreneurship in the sense that each individual American could become the owner of their very own business.
Yeah, I remember Amway very well, and of course, there's other companies that are out there. Jewelry companies, Avon. There's also
Mary Kay Cosmetics.
Mary Kay. Yes, I actually know a consultant.
Yeah, sure.
It's interesting how that all came into its fruition because of these kinds of records. The one thing you mentioned about the Chubby Checker and that company, I guess you had to be careful though because of payola. You wouldn't want to get into that kind of scandal. But I can imagine that it's radio stations would be like, oh, okay, sort of, but yeah, okay, it's just training. I get it. Yeah, because they wanted to. There was just another avenue of promoting the records.
Yeah.
How did you go about choosing the different subject matters in this particular book, Designed for Success?
Well, in the first book, we realized there was an emphasis in the records on the life that you had at your home. So having people over for a dinner party or decorating your living room. And then in Design for Success records, well, and also going away, so travel. So the first book was home and away. And in this book, what we saw, because what we do is we put out all the records that we're considering including, and we try to divide them into thematic chapters. So we literally create piles of records that represent the various chapters. And then we look at them and maybe we have to trade some categories. Oh, we thought this one had to do with travel, but it actually has to do with, having fun in your living room. And so we move them around. And as we were doing that with all of our Design for Success records, we realized that there was still that home emphasis and leisure. There was an at work, I guess, emphasis, we would say. And that would be sort of the training records.
Yeah, so the book it's divided up into 3 sections: at home, at work, at leisure. And the at home records include, kind of the whole life course, and one of the interesting ones is called Hear How to Tell Your Children About the Facts of Life. And it's a very, very earnest record. It's from this company called Carlton Records. They put out a whole series of Hear How records: Hear How to Become a Better Bowler,
Play bridge.
Hear How to Play Bridge, Hear How to Go Fishing, and Hear How to Tell Your Children about the Facts of Life. It's kind of a sex ed lecture. And another one is Hear How to Achieve Sexual Harmony in Marriage. And so those were kind of the home records about the family. The leisure records were, how to become a better fisherman, how to learn dancing, and then the at work records are a lot of the training records.
Okay, so three subject matters are subjects, and then you broke it down into the other parts of it. And there's a lot of what's really nice about this book that I liked too was there's a lot of pictures in it. There's a lot of graphical material, so you kind of get the gist of what the conversation is as you go through the book and through the different chapters, which I noticed. Like I said, the barbecuing one is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
The golf one is also another one that was really interesting. So you got to improve your golf game. I think there's also one with Joyce Brothers in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's one about a young girl, I think, and sex for the young girl and how to, how
Yeah,
to
Helen,
get that.
Helen Gurley Brown. So Helen Gurley Brown, got famous by writing the Sex and the Single Girl
Yeah,
book,
Sex and the Single
early
Girl.
60s. And
Yeah,
then she started Cosmopolitan magazine.
The idea that it's not all about just becoming a mother. It's possible to go out and have a career and meet a man within a certain realm that maybe is more appropriate to you. So you go out into the world, you get to know the world and men a little bit. And then, of course, what you're going to do is marry and have
Well,
children.
I think it was all about picking the right
Picking
man.
the right man, yeah. So Sex and the Single Girl was a lot about that. You're not supposed to say single forever in that universe. Yep.
yeah. Back then, you found the
Well, back then they're selling it to us again, so
yeah. There you go.
we can put that record back on in a few years. It's going to be relevant.
Oh, I'm sure it is, and I bet you there's a lot of people out there talking about that, even in the YouTube world, TikTok world.
That is
social
for
media.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
How many records do you actually have in your collection?
What did we decide?
Like 7,500, 7,500 or something.
Not, we don't randomly collect anymore, and we've tried to. I'm sorry for those record collectors who never get rid of anything. We've tried to kind of bring it down because we have limited storage space. We haven't rented a storage barn or another room yet. So we have, and we give the records away. Like if we get second records, that especially the ones that are in our books, when we do book lectures or whatever, we give records away so people can actually have one of the ones that are in our books. So, we keep our record collection, I would say, a little bit trimmed down, but we have almost 1,000 just records that were labeled as Hawaiian music. So the lure of the tropics, the lure of the islands, Paradise Lost.
Yeah, beautiful covers, not always the greatest music. But I think what we find with these records is they tell interesting stories. And that's what we try to do in our books. We write about the graphic design and the album art. We try to identify photographers and graphic designers.
We treat the covers like we're art historians in a little bit. We really try to look at the
And
covers.
we just try to tell stories about every record and then this bigger story of success or whatever it might be. And so, we think the books make great gifts. I think we try to make them fun to read.
We try to
You
make
don't
them
have to
fun.
read it cover to cover, you can pick it up and look at individual records.
Well, and I think the thing that got us to start collecting these records was that when we looked at the covers, we found them attractive, compelling, and also
Sometimes perplexing. It's like,
perplexing. We wanted to know
what
these.
what was this record?
What's with the meat on the
Who-
grill thing,
Yeah,
you know?
who was it for?
But there was an era when the Hawaiian records were coming out, well, because the United States was about to acquire, quote unquote, Hawaii. And they had to convince the mainlanders that there's something that connects that the islands way out there to the mainland America.
Yeah,
And
maybe
so all of these records, back to selling, what's the product they're selling? In that way, all those Hawaiian music records were selling the idea that Hawaii belonged to America,
Yeah,
that Hawaii belonged.
maybe there'll be a bunch of Greenland records.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
or even a bunch of Canadian ones like Stop
Yeah,
It.
right.
Yes.
Okay, so this
Sudbury Saturday night.
this is actually funny because when we were collecting, all these Hawaii records, and again, we started collecting them when they were 25 cents a piece at the Goodwill or the St. Vincent de Paul. We're like, oh my God, we have 1,000 Hawaiian records. How many do we have for Alaska?
Yeah,
Because-
because both Alaska and Hawaii became states in 1959.
And they were both not attached to the, mainland United States of American, continent. It was way up there, attached to you guys, right? So it was how are you going to convince people in this area that Alaska and Hawaii have something to do with us? So we looked for the Alaska state of, Alaska's going to become a state records. How many were there?
There just wasn't a big
We felt like
Alaskan.
4.
Yeah, there just wasn't a big Alaskan movement.
And the Yukon, though, we have a few from the Yukon.
Yeah.
They all have sled dogs on them. The one from Escape to Alaska or whatever it's called, Let's Go to Alaska, has a woman with very few clothes on, mucklucks, laying on a polar bear skin. And because otherwise in Hawaii, it's warm. The women have very few clothes on. That makes sense, right? So if there was this, scantily clad female on the cover part that attracted people to the Hawaii records. If you're all bundled up for Alaska, why are they going to buy the record? There's no scantily clad. Well, they showed that with mucklucks and a polar bear skin, they can have scantily clad females in the Alaska records. But yeah, so the Yukon, maybe we'll start putting out more Yukon records.
Yeah. Or if they do the Canadian ones, they'll probably have a lot of Mounties on them and
Yes.
moose and whatnot. But
Beepers.
it's gonna be a while before we even consider the idea of the 51st state. That's not a starter at the moment at all. But it is certainly, and that's another topic for another day.
Yes.
The other thing too, I wondered about when I looked at it, is I wonder if they had, or because you, like you said, you collected music as well. Some of those cheesy sets of music that were used in adult films back in the 70s. I mean, some of that was pretty bad music. Did any of those come out?
We have Fanny Hill.
Mm-hmm.
That was one.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, we have the
soundtrack.
soundtrack.
That was another notorious soundtrack.
That was a little later. And then there's some that were, like Dutch and Danish
and Italian
and French
and
Italian soundtracks for movies maybe we've never heard, but we're like, wow, this is a soundtrack. And it was obviously one of these showing some skin. And the young female coming to fruition sort of theme. Yeah, there are a few of those. I Am Curious. I think we have soundtracks for I Am Curious Blue and I Am Curious Yellow, which was a Swedish
film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, the kind of thing going on in those.
Quite something.
Yeah, I've got the book here, and this is what it looks like. Maybe you can see it, maybe not. Sorry, there we go.
Now we can see it.
Yeah, so anybody looking for that, look for this book. Where can they get Design for Success? How do people?
I mean, it's distributed by Penguin Random House, so it's pretty widely available. Amazon, of course, has it,
but not right now.
But people are, thinking maybe they shouldn't buy an Amazon, but any bookstore can order it.
Bookstores can order it. It should be, like Jonathan said, easily available because Penguin Random House has taken it up. But there are other online book sales websites that you can go to. Also, there's a great record store in Chicago called Dusty Groove, and Dusty Groove makes it possible to order the book through their site. There are a lot of different, I don't know if, a lot of those big stores have websites that order, but people might not want to order from them right now. So, yeah, it's not self-published, it's an MIT press book. And so any site that offers to,
Yeah, you can get it through Walmart and Target and things
I
like
wasn't
that.
gonna say those names, but yes, you can get it through them too.
And what's the next project for you guys? What's happening?
No, you didn't just ask us that. Terrible. Well, I mean, we love our Hawaii records, the hula records. We featured a little bit of each of those in all of our books. So that's kind of a back burner project.
Thinking we need to do a book called The Hawaiian Album and just kind of go through Hawaii, how did this become so popular? And, the records they're beautiful, but they're also of their time. So, you need to do a little critical
Yeah,
analysis on them.
there's some problematic
But just, I think they tell interesting stories about these broader issues about why did Hawaiian music become so popular?
Another thing though, that's probably the first book that we're going to be working on is on some designers who created record album covers. And we're doing that because the library archive at Rochester Institute of Technology, where Jonathan teaches, has the process work of several vinyl record album cover designers. So in the archive, they have the first sketch that was done to be the record album cover, and then the first watercolor sketch, and then the first photographs of the album cover, and then the final version of the album cover. So they have asked us to write a book on 4 or 5 of these major record album cover designers, not all from the mid-century, some of them are later, like Bob Cato. You can tell them a little bit about that, but just the process. So we're going to have an opportunity to talk about the designer and then to talk about the process and then feature the images. So again, a lot of pictures will be in the book.
Yeah, that project we're going to try to do more unveiling of the art of album cover art. So Bob Cato was the art director at Columbia Records for a long time. He won some Grammys for best record cover design, but he also is well known for kind of art directing the band. And their first album, has one particular photo of the band on the cover. It's become kind of iconic. Well, in the archive, they have all the other shots that day.
Yeah, the one that
they didn't use. So,
yeah, so we're excited about that.
It tells a really interesting story of some of those classic albums from the 60s and 70s.
Oh, very interesting. And obviously you guys have a background not only in being authors, but where does this all come from? Is this from a university or other kind of teaching perspective? What brought you into this as well?
I got my PhD in philosophy, but in order to avoid occasionally reading Kant or Mill or whoever, I would go to the St. Vincent de Paul and go through the records. And then I think when I started looking at records in conjunction with Jonathan, we started asking questions about them, which is what philosophers are supposed to do. Like, how did this come to be the way it is? Who is this representing? Why did these particular characteristics come to suggest certain things about a person's personality or their ethical goodness or their evilness? And so I started using, I would say, my philosophical questioning and critical skills to look at these record album covers.
Yeah, I teach courses in visual culture and communication at Rochester Institute of Technology. I think this project is a classic case of, we were doing little papers on record covers and Hawaiian music. And then we kind of decided, we should really pursue this. And we got serious. What had been a back burner side project became our main project. And we sat down, wrote the first book. We said, yeah, this is what we should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, because we've both been in universities and together we worked in business schools. So particularly in Europe, so Sweden and England. And there we did work on consumer culture, like what does it mean to become a person in a world of objects that support or take away from your identity. And how do you sell things? And how do you sell things to people who want to believe themselves to be in a certain way? Certain products are going to appeal to some people, some products are not. How do you target them? Those kinds of questions. And Jonathan and I probably always took a more investigative or critical or questioning eye. Some people just want to sell more. I think we wanted to know a little bit more about the background of these things. So coming out of business schools as well, Jonathan has a background in psychology. So together with philosophy, psychology, and then this sense of marketing and consumer culture, it gave us a very particular view, I think, on the records and caused us to ask certain kinds of questions that then became the book, beyond just being celebratory and having fun and wanting to share some of these images and great colors and perspectives
design.
and design. A lot, yeah, it's a lot about design.
Perfect. Now, if anybody wants to get in touch with you to talk about this and other projects that you're doing, how would they do that?
We do have a website, borgersonschroeder.com. So Borgerson, Schroeder, SCHROEDER.com. And that has information about our book. Our first book, we also have a website just designed for hi-fi living.
Don't we have one for design for dancing and design for success too? That they find. We have sites for those.
I think those are the best sites to go to.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, it's been a real blast talking about this and learning a bit about you guys. Janet Borgerson, I hope I got the name right. Jonathan Schroeder, authors, philosophers, psychologists, all in a really neat package designed for success as a book that they put out, and it's a really excellent read. I've taken a peruse of it myself. Definitely want to promote that. And I thank you very much for doing this today. It's really been fun.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Cliff. It was great to talk to you.
Perfect. We'll get this up on the YouTube channel as soon as possible. We'll see you in the next episode. My name is Cliff Tour. Thanks for dropping in and seeing another vision of what we're trying to do here, which is basically tell stories on Zoomed In, right here on our YouTube channel, Candid Conversation, Zoomed In, and Comments video channel. See you in the next episode.
Now on, you will not be able to eat any foods containing sugar, starches, fats, or oils. You are going to find yourself disliking the taste of sugar, starches, fats, or oils. The taste, even the thought, of any foods containing sugar, starches, fats, or oils will be repulsive to you